Good evening, everyone. Tonight we are going to be discussing isosceles and equilateral triangles. As we previously discussed, isosceles triangles have special properties because they have two congruent sides. Because of this, we have special names for all the pieces of an isosceles triangle. So those two congruent sides are called the legs, and the vertex angle is the angle formed by those two congruent sides. The third side, the non-congruent side, is called the base, and the two angles touching the base are the base angles, and we know those two angles are congruent, hence why I've marked them with the double congruency angle marks. Now, speaking of base angles, we have the base angle theorem. This says that if two sides of a triangle are congruent, then the angles opposite those two sides are also congruent. And the converse of the base angle theorem just says the flip-flop. If two angles in a triangle are congruent, then the sides opposite those angles are congruent. Then we have the corollary to the base angle theorem, which says if a triangle is equilateral, then it is also equiangular. So, like we said before, if we have congruent sides, then the angles opposite are congruent. So if we have three congruent sides, we have three congruent angles. We also have the corollary to the converse of the base angle theorem, and so that means if we have three congruent angles, we have three congruent sides. Now here's my question. Is it possible for an equilateral triangle to have an angle measure other than 60 degrees? Pause the video and just think for a second. Is that possible? Hopefully you cited no, that it's not possible, because each angle must be congruent to the others, so the only option is 60 degrees plus 60 degrees plus 60 degrees equals 180 degrees. Now let's look at an example. Find the value of x and y. So if we look at the picture, hopefully a few things pop out to us. We should see this right angle right here, so we know that's a 90-degree angle. Hopefully we see that we have these two congruent sides, which means this side triangle is isosceles. And then the larger triangle has three congruent sides. So that means all three sides are congruent, so all three angles are congruent. So we have an equilateral triangle. So as we just discussed, if we have an equilateral triangle, then that means all of our angles are 60 degrees. And now that we have all of our angles marked at 60, then we can see that right here we have an angle complementary to 60, so we know it's going to add to 90, and that means that this angle is going to be 30 degrees, and then since our smaller triangle is isosceles, then this angle is 30 degrees. So now we know that x is 60 degrees because it's an equilateral triangle, and also here we've labeled our two angles as 30 degrees. Now to find y, we should recall that each triangle has 180 degrees inside of it. So I could write the equation y plus 30 equals 180, and then solve for y. First I'm going to combine my like terms, so y plus 60 equals 180. And then when I subtract 60 from both sides, I find that y is equal to 120 degrees. And that's the end of this video. See you in class.